especially when her third daughter, at times pompous and silly in her own right, might be more receptive to Mr. Collins's assurances. The simple fact was, Mrs. Bennet had not considered it at all. Elizabeth did not know when it had happened, but she had a good notion of how it had come about. Jane, her favourite and most beautiful daughter, had attracted Mr. Bingley, such that her engagement was a settled matter in Mrs. Bennet's mind. Thus, even had Mr. Collins expressed an interest in Jane, Mrs. Bennet would have warned him away, leaving Elizabeth in his sights. In this manner, Mrs. Bennet would rid herself of her most troublesome and incomprehensible daughter. Well, it had certainly not turned out as she wished. Even if Elizabeth had not been certain of her father's support, she would have preferred being put out of the house than to forever demean herself as the wife of William Collins. A woman caught in such an unfortunate position must have no self-respect, for an afternoon in the man's company would strip her of any such pretensions. Mr. Bingley was, of course, another problem. Or perhaps the man himself was not a problem, but his supercilious sisters, an odious friend, most certainly were. The previous evening had been a disaster for the Bennet family, though Elizabeth fancied she was the only one who saw it for what it was. Mr. Bingley was such a genial man. Elizabeth thought it likely that he would ignore her family's weaknesses in favour of the benefits of having Jane for a wife. But his family and friends would certainly not see it that way. What they might do to convince him, Elizabeth could not say, but she feared they would do everything in their power. After the Bennet family's performance the previous evening, Elizabeth found she could understand their concerns. Mrs. Bennet, doing her best impression as the world's most shameless fortune hunter, bragging of how her daughter would capture Mr. Bingley and introduce her other daughters to other wealthy men, Kitty and Lydia running amok, proving they were fit for no more responsibility than drawing childish pictures in the nursery, Mary placing herself at the pianoforte without being asked, and continuing long after she should have stopped, and even her father pulling Mary away in the most embarrassing manner possible. They had all conspired to make Jane unacceptable in Mr. Bingley's eyes, and those of his family, and none of them could see it. Elizabeth could not account for such wilful blindness. With her father, Elizabeth was the most disappointed. As an intelligent and educated man, he should understand the great disadvantage his family's behaviour was to their respectability and position in society, and yet he was content to laugh at them. Even to her, his favourite daughter, he had executed his duty in a manner calculated to provide himself with the greatest enjoyment. If he was disposed to disapprove of Mr. Collins pursuing her, he should have warned the man away, rather than allowing him to make his farce of a proposal, provoking her mother the way he had, and then shutting the door of his study on them all. How could she possibly hope to live in such a madhouse after days such as the previous 24 hours had been? It is all too much to be borne, said Elizabeth to herself. The moment I return, I shall be subjected to my mother's demands yet again. Charlotte had proven to be her saviour that morning, for she had come when the din had been at its most deafening, and proposed to invite Mr. Collins to Lucas Lodge to dine with the family there. Elizabeth knew that she owed her friend a debt of the deepest gratitude, but Charlotte knew her well enough to know exactly how she might be of service. That Charlotte must now chafe under the puerile attentions of the toadying parson, or in the service of her friend, was not lost on Elizabeth. She would need to remember to thank her friend most profusely when next they met. As Elizabeth walked, the activity which had always calmed her worked to restore her, and she felt her temper ease, her equilibrium restored. She paused a moment, looking about to orient herself, having walked with little thought for the path, or how far it was taking her from Longbourn. She had wandered, she noted, further to the east than she had intended, her steps taking her toward a